The morning sky over New Terra turned dark with alien ships. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Colonial Defense Center, watching the massive vessels position themselves in orbit. Her coffee had gone cold in her hand. She had been a soldier for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. "Ma'am, they're broadcasting on all channels," Lieutenant Park said from his station. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly on the controls. Sarah nodded. "Put it through." The voice that filled the room was harsh and clicking, translated by their computers into flat, emotionless words. "Humans of New Terra, you have 1 solar hour to surrender your world to the Thraxi Empire. Resistance will result in the deployment of our Ravagers. You cannot win. You cannot hide. Surrender or face extinction." The transmission ended. Sarah looked around at her small team. New Terra was an agricultural colony, home to 2 million farmers, ranchers, and their families. They had a small defense force, a few orbital guns, and some ground vehicles with weapons. Nothing that could stop an empire. "What are Ravagers?" Park asked quietly. Sarah pulled up her database. The file was thin, mostly rumors from other colonies that had fallen. "War beasts. The Thraxi breed them, 400 kilograms each. Armor-plated hide, claws that can cut through steel. They hunt in packs and they don't stop until everything is dead." "Do we surrender?" another officer asked. Sarah thought about the farms stretching across the valleys, the children playing in the streets of their small towns, the families who had traveled light years to build a new home. She thought about her own daughter, Emma, probably at school right now, unaware that the sky had filled with nightmares. "No," Sarah said. "Send the reply. Tell them New Terra will never surrender." An hour passed. The aliens did not respond with words. Instead, their ships opened their cargo bays. Thousands of dark shapes fell from orbit, wrapped in heat-resistant pods. The pods screamed through the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire across the sky. They hit the ground all across the continent, crushing trees and buildings where they landed. The pods split open. The Ravagers emerged. Jake Morrison was checking on his cattle when the first pod crashed into his north pasture. The impact threw him off his feet. His dog, Rex, started barking frantically. Jake got up slowly, dirt covering his clothes, and stared at the smoking crater. Something moved inside. Jake had been a veterinarian before he became a rancher. He had worked with lions, bears, and wolves in rehabilitation centers back on Earth. He knew predators. He knew when to run and when to stand still. Right now, every instinct told him to run. The creature that climbed out of the crater was built like a nightmare. It stood on 4 legs, each ending in claws as long as kitchen knives. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of dark armor. The head was long and narrow, filled with teeth. 6 eyes glowed red in the morning light. The Ravager saw him. It screamed, a sound like tearing metal, and charged. Jake ran. He sprinted toward his barn, Rex running beside him. Behind them, the Ravager's claws tore up the ground. It was fast, impossibly fast. Jake could hear its breathing, feel the earth shake with each step. He reached the barn and slammed the door shut. The Ravager hit it a second later. The entire building shook. Wood splintered. The beast screamed again and started tearing at the door. Jake grabbed his rifle from the wall. His hands were steady now. Years of training took over. He aimed at the gap in the door where the creature's claws were ripping through and fired 3 times. The Ravager howled and pulled back. Jake heard it pacing outside, snarling. He reloaded and waited, his heart hammering in his chest. This was happening all across New Terra. The Ravagers attacked everything that moved. In the towns, people fled into buildings and shelters. The colonial defense forces fought back, but their bullets barely slowed the creatures down. The armor plating was too thick. You had to hit the joints, the eyes, the exposed areas. And the Ravagers didn't fight alone. They hunted in packs, coordinating their attacks like wolves. By nightfall, 300 people were dead. Thousands more were injured or trapped. The Cathraxi ships remained in orbit watching. On the flagship, War Master Zethic observed the screens with satisfaction. The Ravagers were performing exactly as designed. The humans were scattered, terrified, helpless. In 3 days, maybe 4, they would beg to surrender. They always did. "Deploy the second wave at dawn," he ordered. Let them have no rest. His officers clicked their mandibles in agreement. The Ravagers were the perfect weapon. They required no supply lines, no support, no commands. Once released, they simply killed until nothing remained alive. The Thraxi had used them on 17 worlds. 17 worlds had surrendered. Zethik looked at the planet below. Soon it would be 18. Sarah Chen worked through the night, coordinating defenses and rescue operations. Reports came in from every settlement. The news was bad. The Ravagers were everywhere and they didn't stop attacking. They didn't sleep. They didn't retreat. "We're getting slaughtered out there," Park said, exhaustion heavy in his voice. "Our weapons aren't made for this. We need heavy artillery, but most of it is in the capital and the roads are blocked." Sarah rubbed her eyes. She had been awake for 20 hours. "What about the civilians? Any progress on the evacuation?" "Some, but the Ravagers are hunting them. Every time we move people, we lose more." Park hesitated. "Commander, we need to consider surrender. We can't win this." Sarah looked at the map on her screen. Red markers showed Ravager positions. There were hundreds of them, and more were being dropped every hour. Park was right. They couldn't win this. Not with conventional warfare, but something bothered her. Something about the creatures themselves. "Park, pull up the footage from Morrison's ranch. The one from this morning." Park pulled up the video. It showed Jake Morrison's encounter with the Ravager, filmed by his security camera. Sarah watched it 3 times. "Look at that," she said, pointing at the screen. "The creature is aggressive, yes. But look at its movement when it first comes out of the pod. It's confused, disoriented, it doesn't know where it is." "So?" Park asked. "So these aren't soldiers," Sarah said slowly. "Soldiers have discipline, training, purpose. This thing is just attacking everything it sees. It's acting on pure instinct." She paused. "It's acting like a scared animal." Park frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we're fighting this wrong." Sarah opened a communication channel. "Get me Jake Morrison." "The rancher. I need to talk to him right now." The night was long and filled with screams, but by morning Sarah Chen had the beginning of an idea. It was crazy. It might not work, but it was the only chance they had. The war for New Terra was about to take a very unexpected turn. Jake Morrison answered the call from Commander Chen at 3 in the morning. He had not slept. The Ravager was still outside his barn, pacing and growling. Every few minutes it would test the walls, looking for a way in. Rex lay beside him, exhausted from hours of barking. "Mr. Morrison," Sarah's voice came through his communication device. "I saw the footage from your security system. You survived an encounter with one of these creatures. I need to know everything you observed." Jake leaned against the wall, his rifle across his lap. "It's fast, it's strong, and it wants to kill me." "That's about all I know, Commander." "No," Sarah said. "You're a veterinarian. You worked with dangerous animals. Look at it like a vet, not a victim." "What do you see?" Jake was quiet for a moment. He moved to the window and looked out. The Ravager was sitting now, its 6 eyes fixed on the barn. In the moonlight, he could see its sides moving rapidly. It was breathing hard. "It's exhausted," Jake said suddenly. "Look at it. It's been attacking for hours without rest. That's not sustainable for any creature." "What else?" Sarah pressed. Jake studied the beast more carefully. "It's injured. See that leg? It's favoring it. Probably from the crash landing. And look at its body condition. I can see the ribs through the armor plating. It's underweight. They're not feeding these things properly. Anything else?" "Yeah." Jake watched as the Ravager stood and paced again. "It's alone. These things are supposed to hunt in packs, right? But this one is by itself and it's agitated. It keeps making these sounds like it's calling for others. It's isolated and it doesn't like it." Sarah was silent for a moment. "Mr. Morrison, what would you do if this was a dangerous animal you needed to handle? Not kill, handle." Jake thought about his years working in wildlife rehabilitation. "I'd sedate it, examine it, and figure out what's making it aggressive. Most animals aren't naturally this violent. Something is driving this behavior." He paused. "Commander, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking these aren't weapons," Sarah said. "They're tools, and tools can be broken or repurposed. Can you trap that Ravager?" "Trap it?" Jake almost laughed. "Commander, I don't think you understand how big and dangerous this thing is. You've trapped grizzly bears before. I read your file. Grizzly bears don't have armor plating and claws made of metal. But they have the same basic biology, don't they? They need to eat, sleep, and breathe. They respond to stimuli. They can be controlled." Sarah's voice was firm. "Mr. Morrison, we're losing this war. If we fight these creatures head on, we'll all be dead in a week. But if we can understand them, maybe we can find another way. Will you help me?" Jake looked at Rex, then at the Ravager outside. He thought about his neighbors, the families in the nearby town. his own life that he had built here. Then he thought about Emma Chen, the commander's daughter, who sometimes helped him with the cattle when she visited the ranch. "All right," he said. "I'll try, but I'm going to need some equipment." By dawn, Jake had everything he needed. Commander Chen had sent a military transport with tranquilizer guns, steel cables, and a portable containment unit. 3 soldiers came with it, looking nervous. "The plan is simple," Jake explained. "We bait it into the containment unit, sedate it, and then we can examine it safely." "What if it doesn't work?" one soldier asked. "Then we shoot it and try something else," Jake said. "But we need one alive if we're going to learn anything." He used one of his cattle as bait. He hated doing it, but there was no other choice. They set up the containment unit near the barn, a reinforced steel cage with one open side. The cow was tied inside, lowing nervously. Jake and the soldiers hid behind his truck, tranquilizer guns ready. They waited. The Ravager appeared within minutes. It smelled the cow. For a moment it stood still, evaluating the situation. Then hunger won over caution. It approached the cage slowly, testing each step. "Smart," Jake whispered. "It knows it's a trap." But the Ravager was starving. Jake had been right about its body condition. It entered the cage, moving toward the cow. The moment it was fully inside, Jake triggered the remote. The steel door slammed down. The Ravager exploded into fury. It threw itself against the wall, screaming and clawing. The entire cage shook. For a terrible moment, Jake thought it would tear its way out. "Now!" he shouted. All 4 of them fired tranquilizer darts through the slots in the cage. The Ravager snapped at the darts, pulled some out with its claws, but enough hit their mark. After 2 minutes of thrashing, the creature's movements became sluggish. After 5 minutes, it collapsed. Jake waited another 10 minutes to be sure, then carefully opened the cage. The soldiers kept their rifles pointed at the beast while Jake approached with a medical scanner. Up close, the Ravager was even more terrifying. But Jake forced himself to look with a professional eye. He ran the scanner over its body, checking vital signs, looking for anomalies. What he found made his blood run cold. "Commander," he said into his communicator, "you need to see this." Sarah Chen arrived an hour later with a full medical team. They had set up a field laboratory in Jake's barn. The Ravager was still unconscious, strapped to a reinforced examination table. "Show me," Sarah said. Jake pointed to the scanner results. "Look at this. There are implants throughout its body. Here in the spine, here in the brain, here in the major organs. They're causing constant pain. Why would they do that?" Sarah asked. "Control," Jake said grimly. "The pain keeps them aggressive, keeps them from thinking clearly. And look at this." He pointed to another scan. "This implant can deliver an electric shock. They're using fear and pain to control these creatures." One of the veterinarians on Sarah's team spoke up. "Commander, I found something else. This creature is covered in old scars, signs of malnutrition and stress indicators. It's been abused for a long time." Sarah looked at the unconscious Ravager. Its breathing was steady now, peaceful in a way it had never been while awake. Without the rage and violence, she could see it differently. It wasn't a monster. It was a victim. "Can we remove the implants?" she asked. "It's risky," Jake said. "But yes, I think so. The main pain generator is here at the base of the skull. If we can deactivate it—" "Do it," Sarah ordered. Jake worked carefully with surgical tools. His hands were steady despite the danger. If the Ravager woke up during the procedure, they would all die. But he had spent years performing delicate surgeries. He knew what he was doing. The implant came out with a soft click. The Ravager's body relaxed even further. The tension that had been visible in every muscle simply melted away. "Incredible," one of the veterinarians whispered. They removed 3 more implants over the next hour. When they were done, the Ravager looked different. The aggressive tension was gone. It looked almost peaceful. "Now what?" Park asked. He had arrived with Sarah. "We have one sedated monster." "What does this prove?" "It proves they're not monsters," Sarah said. "They're prisoners of war, same as us. The Cathraxi are using them as weapons, but they don't want to be weapons." "That's a big assumption." "Commander, then let's test it." Sarah turned to Jake. "When it wakes up, how do we know if you're right?" Jake thought for a moment. "We feed it. We give it water. We treat it kindly. And we watch how it responds." He smiled slightly. "I've worked with abused animals before. They remember kindness even after everything they've been through." The Ravager woke 6 hours later. Everyone stood back, weapons ready. The creature's eyes opened slowly. It tried to move and found itself restrained. For a moment, everyone expected it to go into a fury, but it didn't. The Ravager looked around, confused. It tested the restraints gently, not violently. Then it made a sound, a low rumble that wasn't quite a growl. Jake recognized that sound. He had heard it from injured animals before. It wasn't aggression. It was uncertainty. Slowly, carefully, Jake approached the table. The soldiers tensed. Sarah held up her hand, stopping them from interfering. Jake was now 3 feet from the Ravager's head. The creature watched him with all 6 eyes. Jake could see intelligence there, awareness. He spoke softly, the same tone he used with frightened animals. "It's okay," he said. "Nobody's going to hurt you. You're safe now." The Ravager tilted its head slightly. Still watching, still evaluating. Jake picked up a piece of raw meat from the nearby table. The Ravager's eyes fixed on it immediately. Jake placed it near the creature's mouth. The Ravager sniffed it. Then, very carefully, it took the meat. It ate slowly. Not the frenzied feeding of a starving predator, but cautious, controlled bites. "Well, I'll be damned," Park whispered. Sarah watched with growing hope. "Mr. Morrison, how long until we can release it?" "A few days," Jake said. "We need to let it recover, build trust, and make sure it's stable." "But Commander, if this works with one Ravager, then it might work with all of them," Sarah finished. She looked at the creature on the table, then at her team. "Get me every veterinarian, animal trainer, and rancher on this planet. And get me a lot of tranquilizer darts. We're about to change the rules of this war." Outside, dawn was breaking over New Terra. Across the planet, Ravagers continued their attacks. But in a small barn on Morrison's ranch, something impossible was beginning to happen. The war beasts were about to meet the one species in the galaxy that couldn't resist trying to befriend anything with 4 legs and a heartbeat. The message went out across every communication channel on New Terra. Commander Chen's voice was clear and firm. "Attention all colonists. We have new intelligence about the Ravagers. They are not our true enemy. They are controlled through pain and fear by the Cathraxi. We have successfully removed the control implants from one specimen, and it is no longer hostile. We are asking for volunteers. If you have experience with animals, we need you. If you are a veterinarian, trainer, rancher, or farmer, we need you. Report to your local defense center for briefing. This is not a joke. This is not desperation. This is our best chance to survive." The responses came in slowly at first. People were skeptical, terrified, and exhausted. But then Jake Morrison appeared on the broadcast standing next to the Ravager they had captured. The creature was calm, eating from Jake's hand while Rex sat nearby, no longer afraid. "I've worked with dangerous animals my whole life," Jake said to the camera. "I've never seen anything like this transformation. This creature was trying to kill me yesterday. Today it's responding to basic commands and showing signs of trust. The Cathraxi turned them into weapons, but they're still just animals. And humans have been working with animals for thousands of years. We can do this." The volunteers started coming in. Veterinarians from the agricultural settlements. Dog trainers from the towns. Horse breeders, even zoo workers who had retired to New Terra. They came with their own equipment, their own ideas, and their own hope. Sarah Chen organized them into teams. Each team got tranquilizer guns, portable scanners, and surgical kits. Their mission was simple: capture Ravagers, remove the implants, and begin the domestication process. "This is insane," Park said, watching the volunteers prepare. "We're asking farmers to go up against creatures that have been killing trained soldiers. These farmers handle bulls, stallions, and rams every day," Sarah replied. "They know how to read animal behavior. They know when to be gentle and when to be firm. That's more valuable than combat training right now." The first capture team was led by Maria Santos, a horse trainer who had worked with wild Mustangs back on Earth. Her team tracked a pack of 3 Ravagers to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of a town. "Same principles as wild horses," Maria explained to her team. "We don't chase them down. We guide them where we want them to go, set up the barriers." They used her livestock trucks as mobile walls, creating a corridor that led to a reinforced pen. Then they used noise and movement to herd the Ravagers toward the trap. It took 4 hours and incredible patience. Every time a Ravager turned the wrong way, they had to back off and start again. But eventually all 3 Ravagers were in the pen. The tranquilizers came next, then the surgeries. By evening, 3 more Ravagers were free of their implants. "They're scared," Maria reported to Sarah. "But they're not aggressive anymore. It's like taking a bit out of a horse's mouth. Suddenly they can think clearly again. Similar reports came in from across New Terra. A cattle rancher captured 2 ravagers using the same gates he used for his bulls. A wildlife rehabilitator talked down a ravager that had cornered itself in a building, using calm vocal tones and non-threatening body language. A veterinarian performed surgery on a ravager in the back of her mobile clinic while it was sedated, removing 7 different implants. Not everyone succeeded. 5 volunteers died in the first week when captures went wrong, but 37 ravagers were caught, treated, and began showing remarkable changes in behavior. Jake Morrison became the unofficial expert. He spent his days working with the original ravager, which he had started calling Keeper. The name caught on. Each captured ravager got a name. Naming them was important, the trainers said. It helped everyone remember these were individuals, not just monsters. Keeper learned fast. Within a week, the ravager responded to basic voice commands. Sit, stay, come. The same commands humans had used with dogs for thousands of years. Keeper's 6 eyes would track Jake's movements, watching for cues and signals. When Jake showed approval, Keeper made a rumbling sound that might have been pleasure. It's like working with a very large, very dangerous dog, Jake reported in a video call with Sarah. Behind him, Keeper was lying down while Rex cautiously sniffed at the creature's armored plates. The intelligence is there. They want to please. They want structure and safety. The Cathraxi gave them chaos and pain. We're giving them something better. The breakthrough came in the 3rd week. A ravager named Hunter was being worked with by Tom Chen, a dog trainer who happened to be Sarah's cousin. Tom had been using food rewards to reinforce positive behavior. Hunter would sit, stay, and walk on a lead, but they were still nervous around each other. Then a Cathraxi patrol unit attacked the training facility. 3 alien soldiers appeared, weapons firing. Tom dove for cover. Hunter had a clear path to escape. Instead, Hunter charged the Cathraxi soldiers. The creature's roar shook the walls. It was bigger than the aliens, faster, and now it was fighting to protect rather than to terrify. Hunter took down 2 soldiers before the 3rd retreated. Tom was unhurt. Hunter returned to Tom's side, rumbling nervously, checking him for injuries with gentle sniffs. Tom, shaking with adrenaline, reached out slowly and touched Hunter's head. "Good boy," Tom whispered. "Good boy," Hunter's rumble deepened, a sound of contentment. The bond was complete. The news spread like wildfire through the resistance. The Ravagers weren't just becoming non-hostile. They were choosing sides. They were protecting their handlers. War Master Zethic watched the reports from his flagship with growing horror. His perfect weapons were being turned against him. How is this possible? The Ravagers were conditioned from birth to kill. The pain implants ensured obedience, yet somehow these humans were breaking that conditioning. "Deploy more Ravagers," he ordered. "Double the numbers. They cannot capture them all." But the Cathraxi didn't understand what they were facing. Humans had domesticated wolves into dogs. They had turned wild horses into partners. They had tamed cats, ferrets, and birds of prey. They had worked with elephants, dolphins, and even bears. The human instinct to befriend animals was stronger than any military strategy. More Ravagers meant more captures. The humans got better at it with practice. They learned which tranquilizer doses worked best. They learned that Ravagers responded well to pack structures, so they started working them in groups. They learned that Ravagers loved water and would calm down if given a chance to swim in the farm ponds. Sarah Chen began integrating the bonded Ravagers into military operations. A unit of soldiers with Ravager companions could move through territory that was previously too dangerous. The Ravagers could smell Cathraxi soldiers from a mile away. Their armor made them nearly invulnerable to the aliens' energy weapons, and their loyalty to their handlers was absolute. The Cathraxi started losing ground battles. Their soldiers were terrified of the Ravagers, and now the Ravagers were hunting them. It was a complete reversal of the intended strategy. By the end of the first month, New Terra had captured and rehabilitated over 300 Ravagers. Another 200 were still wild, but the capture teams were getting more efficient every day. The death toll among colonists had dropped significantly. People were starting to believe they might actually survive. Jake Morrison sat on his porch one evening with Emma Chen, Sarah's daughter. Emma had been volunteering at the training facility, working with the younger Ravagers. Keeper lay at Jake's feet with 2 other Ravagers, Scout and Shadow, nearby. Rex had completely gotten over his fear and was sleeping between Keeper's legs. "My mom says the Cathraxi are really mad," Emma said. She was scratching Scout behind what passed for ears. The Ravager leaned into the touch, rumbling happily. "I bet they are," Jake said. "They thought they had the perfect weapon. They didn't count on running into humans." "What makes us so different?" Emma asked. Jake thought about that. He looked at Keeper, who watched him with trusting eyes. He thought about all the animals humans had befriended over the centuries. Dogs, cats, horses, cattle, chickens, even bees. Humans had this strange ability to look at another creature and see a potential friend instead of a threat. "We make friends," Jake said finally. "It's what we do. We can't help it. Even when we should be afraid, even when it's dangerous, we always try to connect. We see something scared or hurt and we want to help. The Cathraxi made these creatures suffer, but we saw that suffering and wanted to stop it. That's the difference," Emma smiled. "Do you think Keeper knows we saved him?" Jake looked at the Ravager, who was now watching the sunset with what seemed like contentment. "Yeah, I think he knows. And I think he's grateful." Across New Terra, in hundreds of farms and training facilities, similar scenes were playing out. Humans and Ravagers learning to trust each other, building bonds that the Cathraxi had never imagined possible. The war wasn't over. The Cathraxi still had their ships, their weapons, and their soldiers. But they had lost their terror weapon, and in doing so, they had given humanity something much more valuable: allies who would fight beside them. In his office on the flagship, War Master Zethic made a decision. He opened a communication channel to the Cathraxi High Command. "Request immediate reinforcements," he said, his voice tight with shame. "The human world has not fallen. The Ravagers have turned against us. We need new strategies." War Master Zethic made his final gambit on day 42 of the invasion. He released every remaining Ravager from his cargo holds. 2,000 war beasts fell from the sky in a single massive deployment. The pods crashed across New Terra like a meteor storm, shaking the ground and filling the air with smoke. "This ends now," Zethic declared to his officers. "Overwhelm them with numbers." "They cannot possibly capture this many." He was right and wrong. The colonists couldn't capture 2,000 Ravagers quickly. But they didn't need to. Something unexpected happened instead. The newly dropped Ravagers wandered the landscape, confused and in pain from their implants. They attacked what they could find, but many of them encountered the rehabilitated Ravagers within hours. The bonded Ravagers approached their wild cousins carefully, making specific sounds that the humans had never heard before. Jake Morrison watched it happen at his ranch. Keeper approached 3 wild Ravagers that had been stalking the property. The wild ones snarled and postured aggressively. Keeper didn't attack. Instead, he made a complex series of rumbles and clicks. The wild Ravagers hesitated. They circled Keeper warily, sniffing him. Then one of them made a sound back. "They're communicating," Jake said into his radio, stunned. "Keeper is talking to them." What happened next changed everything. Keeper led the 3 wild Ravagers back to Jake. They were still aggressive, still dangerous, but they followed Keeper. It was as if Keeper was showing them a different way. The capture teams adapted immediately. They started using bonded Ravagers to approach wild ones. The process was faster and safer. A bonded Ravager would calm a wild one, making it easier to tranquilize and treat. Some wild Ravagers even submitted peacefully when they saw their own kind living without pain. Maria Santos reported a remarkable incident. Her bonded Ravager Thunder approached a pack of 5 wild ones. Instead of fighting, Thunder lay down and exposed his throat, a submission gesture. Then he stood up and walked toward Maria. The 5 wild Ravagers followed him, watching carefully. Maria offered them food. They took it. Within an hour, all 5 were calm enough to sedate and treat. "It's like they're recruiting for us," Maria told Sarah Chen. "The bonded ones are showing the wild ones that humans are safe, that we're the good guys." The Cathraxi couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. Their war beasts were not only refusing to kill humans, they were actively bringing other Ravagers to the humans for help. It was a complete breakdown of everything the Cathraxi understood about warfare. But Zethic had one more weapon. He activated the kill switches embedded in every Ravager's brain. Emergency implants designed to execute the creatures if they ever turned against their masters. He sent the signal. Nothing happened. "War Master, the implants are not responding," his technician reported, mandibles clicking nervously. "That's impossible. Try again." They tried 5 more times. None of the Ravagers dropped dead. The humans had been more thorough than Zethik realized. They weren't just removing the pain generators. They were removing every implant, including the ones the Cathraxi thought were hidden and secure. "They've neutralized our failsafes," an officer said quietly. "The Ravagers are completely beyond our control." Zethik stared at the monitoring screens. This couldn't be happening. The Ravager program had been successful on 17 worlds. The creatures were perfectly designed, perfectly controlled. How had one species of primitives undone everything? He didn't understand humans. That was his fatal mistake. The Cathraxi saw other creatures as tools or enemies. Humans saw them as potential friends. It was a fundamental difference in psychology that Zethik couldn't bridge. The war began to turn in earnest. Sarah Chen organized mixed units of human soldiers and bonded Ravagers. These units were devastating against Cathraxi ground forces. A squad of 10 humans with 5 Ravagers could hold territory that would have required 100 soldiers before. The Ravagers could detect Cathraxi ambushes before they happened. Their armor shrugged off energy weapons. Their claws could tear through Cathraxi combat suits like paper, and they fought with a fury born not from pain and fear, but from loyalty and choice. Lieutenant Park led one of these mixed units into combat for the first time. His team had 3 Ravagers, Frost, Blade, and Spike. They were assaulting a Cathraxi forward base that had been launching raids on civilian settlements. "Frost, scout," Park ordered. The Ravager moved ahead silently despite its size. It returned 2 minutes later and made a specific sound. Park had learned to read Ravager communication. That sound meant enemy ahead, many concealed. "They're waiting in ambush," Park translated for his team. "Frost says there are at least 20 soldiers." Park's team circled wide, using the Ravager's superior senses to avoid detection. They approached the base from an unexpected angle. When they attacked, the Cathraxi were completely unprepared. The Ravagers moved like shadows, taking down soldiers before they could raise an alarm. Park's team secured the base with 0 human casualties. Across New Terra, similar victories piled up. The Cathraxi were being hunted by their own weapons. Morale among the alien forces collapsed. Soldiers refused to leave their ships or fortified positions. The Ravagers were out there and they were angry. The Cathraxi tried one desperate measure. They sent down soldiers with weapons designed to kill Ravagers specifically. High-frequency sonic cannons that would incapacitate the creatures. The first team to deploy these weapons encountered a Ravager named Storm and his handler, a rancher named David Park. The sonic cannon fired. Storm screamed in pain and collapsed. David ran to his fallen companion, shouting for a medic. The Cathraxi soldiers advanced, certain of their victory. Then 12 other Ravagers emerged from the surrounding forest. They had been watching. They had seen Storm fall. The sonic cannon fired again, but the Ravagers spread out, moving too fast. One of them circled behind the Cathraxi squad and destroyed the weapon with a single strike. What followed was brutal. The Cathraxi soldiers never had a chance. The Ravagers didn't just attack. They coordinated, communicated, and executed a tactical assault that any military commander would admire. When it was over, Storm was being treated by medics and the Cathraxi squad was eliminated. David stayed with Storm while the Ravager recovered. The creature's eyes found David's face and the rumble that emerged was unmistakable. Relief, gratitude, trust. "I've got you, buddy," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're gonna be okay." The news of the incident spread through both human and Cathraxi forces. For the humans, it was inspiration. The Ravagers weren't just loyal, they were protective of each other and their handlers. For the Cathraxi, it was terror. The Ravagers were thinking, planning, and working together against them. Jake Morrison observed something during this period that fascinated him. The Ravagers were changing in more than just their behavior. They were healthier. Keeper had gained weight. His armor plates were shinier and his movements were more energized. All the bonded Ravagers showed similar improvements. "They're thriving," Jake reported to Sarah. "Without the constant stress and pain, their bodies are recovering. They're stronger now than when they were under Cathraxi control. We're not just removing their conditioning, we're making them better." Sarah understood the implication. So the Cathraxi were actually weakening their own weapons by abusing them. Exactly. They kept them half-starved, in constant pain, and emotionally damaged. It made them aggressive but also unstable and weak. Now that we're treating them well, they're becoming what they were always supposed to be. Apex predators but with purpose and intelligence. The psychological warfare began almost by accident. Emma Chen took a photo of herself sitting between Keeper and Scout, all three of them relaxed and peaceful. She posted it on the colony's social network with the caption, "My friends." Someone forwarded it to the public networks. It went viral across New Terra. People started posting their own pictures with Ravagers. A child riding on a Ravager's back, a Ravager playing with a dog, a farmer working in his field with 3 Ravagers lounging in the shade nearby. The images reached the Thraxi forces. To them it was incomprehensible. These creatures were supposed to be feared. Instead, human children were playing with them. The Thraxi soldiers looked at the images and saw their own failure reflected back. How could they defeat an enemy that had turned their ultimate weapon into pets? War Master Zethic tried to rally his forces. He gave speeches about Cathraxi's superiority and human weakness. But his soldiers had seen the videos of Ravagers hunting Cathraxi squads. They had heard the reports of bases falling. They knew that going down to the planet's surface was increasingly a death sentence. Then came the incident that broke Zethic's resolve. A Cathraxi squad encountered Jake Morrison and Keeper during a patrol. The squad leader recognized Morrison from the broadcasts. This was the human who had started everything, who had captured the first Ravager. "Kill him," the squad leader ordered. "Kill the human and reclaim the Ravager." They opened fire. Jake dove for cover, but he was hit in the leg. He went down hard, unable to move. Keeper stood over him, taking the energy blasts on his armored hide. The Ravager roared, a sound that carried for miles. The Cathraxi squad advanced, certain they had won. Then the response came. Ravagers emerged from everywhere. Hunter, Shadow, Storm, Thunder, Frost, Blade, and dozens more. War Master Zethic stood before the Cathraxi High Command via holographic transmission. His armor was dented from close calls. His mandibles clicked nervously. He had never failed before. In 40 years of military service, he had conquered 12 worlds personally. But New Terra had broken him. "Explain this disaster," the Supreme Commander demanded. The High Command Council surrounded Zethic's hologram, their collective disapproval palpable. "The humans possess an ability we did not anticipate," Zethic said carefully. "They form bonds with other species, deep emotional connections that override logical considerations. They saw our Ravagers not as weapons but as victims. They removed the control implants and domesticated them." "Domesticated?" one council member hissed. "The Ravagers are designed to be uncontrollable by anyone except us. That is their purpose. The humans did not control them," Zethic explained. "They befriended them. The Ravagers chose to fight for the humans, chose to protect them. The concept of choice was never part of our Ravager conditioning. We did not anticipate that the creatures would have the capacity to choose." The Supreme Commander's eyes narrowed. "You are saying the humans turned our own weapons against us through compassion? That is absurd." "Absurd or not, it is what happened," Zethic replied. "I watched it with my own eyes. Human children playing with Ravagers, human soldiers fighting alongside them as equals, not as masters with tools. The Ravagers are healthier and stronger now than they ever were under our control. The humans feed them better, treat their injuries, and remove the pain that we used to control them. In return, the Ravagers give them absolute loyalty." The council was silent. Finally, one elder spoke. "What is the current situation on New Terra?" "We have no ground presence," Zethic admitted. "Our forces were routed. 60% casualties. The remainder retreated to the ships. Morale is destroyed. The soldiers refuse to deploy again. They fear the Ravagers more than they fear punishment." "Then orbital bombardment," another council member suggested. "Destroy the colony from space." "That would violate 17 interstellar treaties," Zethic said. "And the humans have already transmitted documentation of everything that happened here to the Galactic Council. They have video evidence of our Ravagers, the control implants, the abuse. If we destroy New Terra, we will be condemned by the entire galactic community." The Supreme Commander clicked his mandibles in frustration. "So we withdraw? We abandon the invasion?" "I recommend immediate withdrawal," Zethic said. "And I recommend we retire the entire Ravager program. This will not work against humans. And once other species learn what the humans did, the psychological advantage of the Ravagers will be gone." The council deliberated for hours. Finally, they made their decision. The Cathraxi fleet would withdraw from New Terra. The invasion was officially a failure. And quietly, very quietly, the Ravager breeding programs would be shut down. The secret would be contained as much as possible. But secrets have a way of escaping. On New Terra, Sarah Chen stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement. Beside her stood Jake Morrison, his leg still in a brace from his injury. Keeper, Scout, and Shadow lay nearby, relaxed in the afternoon sun. Down in the valley, they could see the victory celebration beginning. Music drifted up the hill. People were laughing, crying, and hugging each other. "They're really leaving," Jake said, watching the Cathraxi ships break orbit. "They don't have a choice," Sarah replied. "We broke their strategy completely. And the Galactic Council is very interested in what happened here. We've been contacted by 6 different species asking for details." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That we treated the Ravagers with kindness and they responded by choosing to help us. That compassion was our weapon." Sarah smiled slightly. The council representative sounded confused. "I don't think most species think about warfare the way we do." Jake scratched Keeper behind the head ridges. The Ravager rumbled contentedly. "What happens to them now?" "The Ravagers? They're citizens of New Terra," Sarah said firmly. "They fought for this world. They bled for it. Some of them died protecting us. They've earned the right to stay. Besides, I don't think they'd leave even if we asked them to. They've bonded with us," she was right. Over the following months, the Ravagers integrated fully into New Terra society. They worked alongside humans in dozens of capacities: rescue operations where their strength and senses were invaluable, therapy programs where their calm presence helped trauma victims, agricultural work where they could pull plows or guard livestock. Some simply became companions, living with families like very large, very unusual pets. The first Ravager puppies were born 3 months after the war ended. The scientist hadn't known the Ravagers could breed naturally. The Cathraxi had always used artificial methods. But freed from constant stress and pain, the creature's natural biology reasserted itself. A female named Mist gave birth to 4 healthy pups in Maria Santos's barn. Emma Chen was there to see them. The pups were small, only about 20 kilograms each, and their armor plates were soft. They made squeaking sounds and stumbled around on unsteady legs. Emma sat very still as one puppy approached her curiously. "Can I touch it?" she asked Maria. "Ask Mist," Maria said. Emma looked at the mother Ravager. Mist watched her with all 6 eyes, evaluating. Then the Ravager made a soft rumble and looked away, a gesture the humans had learned meant permission. Emma carefully picked up the puppy. It squirmed in her arms, sniffing her face with interest. Then it settled against her chest and made a tiny rumbling sound. Emma laughed with delight. "They're going to grow up not knowing anything about the Cathraxi," Maria said softly. "They'll only know humans. Only know kindness and good," Emma said. "That's how it should be." The news from New Terra spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The Galactic Council released a full report on the incident. Video footage was made public. The galaxy saw human children playing with Ravagers. They saw the surgical removal of control implants. They saw Ravagers fighting to protect humans. And they saw the Cathraxi retreat in defeat. The response was unprecedented. 17 species contacted Earth's government, asking about human-animal domestication techniques. 4 species requested aid in dealing with their own war beast problems. 2 species asked if humans would be willing to work with dangerous creatures that lived on their worlds. The Galactic Council updated their database with a new entry. It read, "Species humans, Homo sapiens. Notable characteristic, unprecedented ability to form emotional bonds with non-sapient species. Humans have historically domesticated dozens of species on their homeworld, turning predators into companions and wild animals into partners. This trait extends to alien species as well. Warning: never deploy war beasts, biological weapons, or aggressive animals against human populations. Humans possess an instinctive drive to befriend, domesticate, and form emotional attachments with other creatures. They will view such weapons as victims to be saved rather than threats to be destroyed. This trait makes traditional terror tactics ineffective and may result in hostile forces losing control of their own biological weapons. Recommendation: human compassion for other species should be considered a significant strategic advantage. Treat with extreme caution. The Cathraxi Empire quietly archived the report but made no public comment. Internally, however, changes were happening. The Ravager program was officially terminated. The breeding facilities were shut down. The remaining Ravagers were sent to a remote world where they could live without the control implants. A kind of retirement. The Empire never admitted fault, but they learned their lesson. Other species learned different lessons. Some saw opportunity. A trading consortium approached New Terra offering contracts for Ravager training services. A military alliance asked if humans would consider creating mixed species units for peacekeeping operations. An agricultural world requested help with a predator problem that was destroying their crops. Humans said yes to all of it. It was in their nature. Jake Morrison sat on his porch 5 years after the war ended. Keeper was older now, moving a bit slower but still healthy and content. The original Ravager had become something of a celebrity. Scientists studied him. Children's books featured him. He had his own section in the New Terra Museum. But mostly, Keeper was just Jake's friend. They spent their days working the ranch together. Keeper helped herd cattle, using his size to intimidate any animals that got rowdy. He patrolled the property at night, keeping predators away. And in the evenings, he lay on the porch while Jake read or worked on his tablet. Emma Chen visited often. She was 18 now, studying xenobiology at the Colony University. She was writing her thesis on Ravager social structures. 3 Ravager pups followed her everywhere, a bonded pack that she had raised from birth. "Jake, I've been thinking," Emma said one evening, sitting beside him while Keeper dozed. "Why do you think we're like this? Why do humans bond with animals so easily?" Jake considered the question. He had thought about it often over the years. "I think it's because we're social creatures ourselves. We evolved in groups, in tribes. We understand pack mentality, family bonds, loyalty. When we see another creature, we instinctively try to figure out if it can be part of our pack. And most of the time, if we try hard enough, it can be.